Congratulations to you. That's what I told you at the beginning of the morning. I'm going to talk to you about things other than SQL Server and the cloud. And I'm going to talk to you again about leadership. I put a simple little idea in front of you this morning called 5-level leadership. And that is, to get the most out of your people, they have to be fully engaged. And that means that they have to be engaged on all 5 levels of their human being: their spirit, their imagination, their intellect, their heart, and their hands. Those of you who were here last year remember I told you the story of Ernest Shackleton and the endurance, and how by understanding that spirit drives everything else in human beings, Shackleton kept his men alive for 2 years after they got stranded in the Antarctic. And today I'd like to tell you a story about the application of that simple little idea inside a business. So let's have a look at 5-level leadership in action in a business. Manufacturing carpet tiles is a dirty business. It sucks in huge amounts of power and spews dirt out into the air and the waterways where their plants are typically built. It's not an industry you might think that the world's greatest environmentally conscious corporation would be born from, but it was. Meet Interface, the world's largest and most successful manufacturer of carpet and carpet tiles. In 1993, Interface was like everyone else in their industry. They sucked in raw materials and spewed out waste, until their CEO and founder, Ray Anderson, made a choice.
And we've begun to hear this question from customers that we'd never heard before. In so many words, what's your company doing for the environment? For which we had no answers. And it was very embarrassing. It was awkward for our salespeople. It was awkward for us. Manufacturing people, our research people, because we just didn't have anything we could say. So a group in our research division decided we ought to convene a task force and bring people from around the world to come together to assess our company's environmental position. What were we doing? Let's get us a list of things that we're doing. So they came to me and they said, yeah, we want to do this. I said, great, go for it. And they said, well, we want you to launch this task force, to meet with them in their first meeting and launch them, give them a kickoff speech with your environmental vision. I didn't have an environmental vision. I didn't want to make that speech. They stayed on my case, and I finally said, okay, I'll be with you, I'll meet with you, and I'll launch your task force. But I did not know what I was going to say. I was really sweating. And at that moment, Paul Hawkins' book landed on my desk, and sort of like the rest is history. I was not an environmentalist. I had never given a thought to what we were taking from the earth, doing to the earth to make our products, except to always be sure there's enough of that stuff coming through the pipeline to keep our factories running, but not a thought. I was attuned to my customers. And when I found a subject that they were interested in, I got interested. But when I found Hawkins' book, it was a spear in the chest experience. And I read it and wept because it just laid out, so clearly the problems of the industrial system, the system of which, my company, my creation, this third child of mine, was an integral part. And I made that speech to that tiny little task force and using Hawkins' material and challenged them to lead our company to sustainability.
He found in that little group of people several who were just as passionate as he was, so they came up with a vision. It was called Mission Zero, the promise to eliminate any negative impact that interface had on the environment by the year 2020, to be a totally sustainable corporation. As far as they could find, no one had ever tried to do that, and he saw his job as leader change.
I know personally that I continue to speak, not just that first speech to that little group, but gathering of interface people, plant meetings, sales meetings, and I liken it to a pebble dropped in a pond. You know, there's a ripple that goes from that eventually dies on a distant shore. But the continual speaking that I did continued to pour energy into the ripple so that the ripple grew instead of diminishing. So from my point of view, that was my role. You know, to continue to articulate the vision over and over and over, even when people thought I'd gone around the bend.
The mission began to take on a life of its own. I believe that human beings, if they're given a big challenge and good leadership, can do virtually anything they set their minds to. And Ray had certainly given his team a big challenge.
We began to get traction and move up that mountain, that very high mountain. From the very beginning, you know, the metaphor of the mountain higher than Everest. And our people, one by one, made up their own minds. Not something that anybody dictated, thou shalt do this. People adopted it on their own. And, you know, and the goodwill in the marketplace is just astounding. Those same people that were asking that question 11, 12 years ago, what's your company doing, have embraced the company for what we are doing. We're changing minds and changing hearts, and we are changing the culture of a company, and we're changing the culture of an industry, and in time, we might even change the culture of a culture. It's turning out to be a better way to make a bigger profit. The amazing thing is, here we are 11 years into this journey, and our costs are down, not up. Our products are the best they've ever been, through David Oakey's adoption of biomimicry. Our people are motivated, but I suppose when people see it, they get it, and they can never unget it. Like somebody said, there's no such thing as an ex-environmentalist.
Biomimicry is the process of looking at nature and trying to find the ways that she does things and then apply them to business. It was one of just many ways that Interface started to look at their business like they had never done before. And suddenly that business for the people who worked there was not about making carpet tiles, it was literally about changing business.
I saw carpet tiles the first time, I thought, so smart, so right. When I saw sustainability and finally saw it with Hawkins' help, it was very much the same feeling. So right, so smart, but orders of magnitude more important. And today I would say that pioneering this new way of doing business is the ultimate purpose of Interface. It goes beyond the bottom line to a purpose, a higher purpose that all of us can subscribe to, be part of, be motivated by, and be challenged by.
But this isn't woo-woo. There's some bottom line. They've taken $450 million of cost and waste out of their operation. They've reduced their power consumption 50%. They've reduced the amount of water they use in manufacturing 77%. They've diverted over 200 million tons of waste from landfill. Today, over 28% of their energy is from 100% renewable sources, and through all that, sales are up 27%. What Ray has shown us in business is that he has changed the game from being about carpet tiles to something bigger, something that people could lock their spirits into. And it was best reflected in this poem that someone wrote for him early on the journey.
It was in that phase when I was talking and not knowing whether I was connecting. People were looking at me with blank faces, and I didn't know whether they heard me or cared, or, you know. And then Glenn Thomas wrote that poem after being in one of those meetings, and it was just the most amazing, encouraging moment for me, because it told me, by golly, one person got it, and I was, I felt sure he must surely be speaking for more than himself. Tomorrow's child without a name and unseen face, and knowing not your time or place. Tomorrow's child, though yet unborn, I met you first last Tuesday morning. A wise friend introduced us to, and through his sobering point of view, I saw a day that you would see, a day for you, but not for me. Knowing you has changed my thinking, for I never had an inkling that perhaps the things I do might someday somehow threaten you. Tomorrow's child, my daughter's son. I'm afraid I've just begun to think of you and of your good, though always having known I should. Begin I will to weigh the cost of what I squander, what is lost, if ever I forget that you will someday come and live here too. Get up and get going. There's lots to do.
It's easy in business to get lost in the numbers, isn't it? To get lost in the left brain and the hands, the plan and the work. But great human performance does not come from those two places. It comes from spirit, imagination, and heart. I believe as a leader, if you give your people a big idea that touches their spirit, they can do anything. I put to you that if you give them a mission that challenges them and then support them in how to do that, they can do absolutely everything. History has shown us when great leaders do that, when they touch their people's spirits and imaginations, get their passion wrapped behind something, they can do anything. Ray Anderson and his people at Interface completely understand this. And I ask you this as leaders. We've heard some great presentations this morning, and we've talked about some fabulous opportunities ahead of us, ahead of you in your business, particularly from this new idea around cloud computing. But here's the challenge I put to you as leaders. When you take this idea of the cloud back to your people, are you going to deliver it to them in a way that inspires them about changing the world, about doing something big? Or is it just going to be more work that they got to get done before they go home on the weekend? The difference between the answer to those questions is leadership. And that answer lies with all of you.